Jude Hartley gazed at the hologram summons that hung over his workstation, the pulsing blue light of it creating a spooky atmosphere around his small lab. He stared, thinking he had misread the elaborate script, but the words were still the same. Your presence is necessary by decree of the Galactic Women's Tribunal. His abdomen stumbled. These days, everyone understood what those summons signified. Things had gotten tough ever since Earth joined the Galactic Society in 2215, particularly for male humans who were nearing reproductive maturity. With his thoughts racing, Jude ran a hand over his unkempt brown hair. Some error had to have occurred. He was a geneticist, not a breeder whose offspring would be sent to some faraway planet. He had a vital job to complete on Earth. He needed to discover remedies and solve puzzles pertaining to the human genome. He jumped as he heard a harsh knock on the lab door. "Dr. Hartley!" was yelled out in a hurried voice. "This is Galactic Affairs Agent Cora. We must talk about your summons." Jude felt her heart race. He thought about running away, but where would he go? All of known space was now subject to tribunal jurisdiction. He sighed in resignation and yelled, "Come in!" The entrance opened to reveal a woman with a serious expression wearing a clean black uniform. Her eyes tightened as she saw Jude's lab in its disorganized state. With no preamble, she stated, "I assume you've received the notification." Jude gave a half-hearted nod and gestured toward the hologram. "There has to be an error. I'm not what you people are looking for. I'm a researcher." Agent Cora's mouth went thin. "No error exists, Dr. Hartley. Many non-human species that are now experiencing catastrophic population declines have been shown to have extremely comparable genetic profiles with you. In accordance with the 2220 Galactic Reproduction Treaty, you are draft, ed to serve as off-world breeders." Jude stared at her in shock. "Off-world maternity leave? You can't mean business. I am entitled to rights. The greater good of interspecies cooperation and galactic law supersede your rights," Agent Cora stated calmly. "You have 2 hours before transportation to organize your affairs. Shows up. You won't need much where you're going, so pack light." That being said, she pivoted on her heel and stormed off, leaving Jude to mull over his racing thoughts on his own. 3 days were needed for the hyperspace travel to reach the Galactic Women's Tribunal. Jude stared out the viewports at the spinning maelstrom of faster-than-light flight for the most of it, in a state of blank astonishment. What had happened to his life? Upon eventually re-entering regular space, his throat congealed with breath. The Tribunal's main office was a huge space station that could have easily been mistaken for a small moon. Its smooth, natural curves gave him the impression that it was a huge lotus blossom floating in space. Jude saw hundreds of tiny craft swarming around the station as their shuttle drew near, like fluttering insects. Some were leaving, perhaps to take other conscripts to their new lives as pampered breeding stock, while others, like his own, were coming. He felt his skin crawl at the thought. With a soft thump, their spacecraft docked, and 2 fair-skinned men led Jude through shiny hallways. Guards with big almond-shaped eyes and elongated limbs, they belonged to the Zari species, one of the elder races that had assisted in founding the galactic civilization eons before. They escorted him into a large room surrounded by benches arranged in rows. Several human guys were milling about, all of them appearing as shell-shocked as Jude sensed. While some sat in startled quiet, others were fighting with officials. The chamber was filled, It the loud voice. "All new arrivals, please proceed to Processing Station 7 for initial screening and assignment." Jude's mind racing, he shuffled forward with the mob. There needed to be a solution. Of this a legal opening, an avenue for appeal. A bored-looking Zari woman at the processing station used a handheld equipment to scan him. "Name?" she asked inanely. "Jude Hartley," he answered, attempting to control his shaking voice. "Look, something went wrong. I'm not a breeding stock. I'm a geneticist. I've done some significant research. With a dismissive gesture, the Zari ended his sentence. Work is not a relevant factor. Here, genetic compatibility is the only factor that counts. She pressed a button on her console. Triumphal case number 77249 has been allocated to you. Head straight to hearing room 12. Jude had to stop protesting before he could be taken away by an additional group of sentinels. They led him through winding hallways until they arrived at a large set of doors identified as Hearing Room 12. The doors opened to reveal a circular room with an elevated dais in the center. 3 extraterrestrial females, a reptile Slick, a Zari, and a creature that Jude was unaware of, possessing shimmering feathers in place of hair. Jude's attention was captured by the figure in front of the dais, though. It was an exquisitely gorgeous, blue-skinned woman dressed in light-colored robes that barely gave her skin any color. Jude entered, and she turned to face him, her eyes like silver liquid. "Ah," the rich, melodic voice of the purring woman said, "the human specimen arrives at last." Jude became indignant at being referred to as a specimen, but before he could respond, the Zari judge spoke in a formal, chilly tone. "We are presently in session for this tribunal. Senator Zira Cavo's appeal for a human breeding partner is case 77249. You are charged, Dr. Jude Hartley, of trying to avoid your galactic obligation. How would you implore?" Jude's thoughts raced. "Not guilty," he said without thinking. "I mean, I'm against the entire process. People cannot just be forced to procreate." The blue-skinned Senator Cavo laughed tinklingly. "Oh, what a spirit. I sincerely hope that you will once we're married, dear. Keep that fire going." "Married?" Jude stammered. "Now wait just a minute." With a hiss and a flick of her forked tongue, the slick judge interrupted him. "Human, silence. You will only talk when this tribunal calls for it." Jude clenched his jaw, furious. This is not possible. Taking place. With her eyes like polished obsidian, the feathered judge leaned forward. "Dr. Hartley, I think you don't realize how serious this is. There are serious population issues affecting many species in the galactic community. Certain adaptive traits found in the human DNA have the potential to prevent the extinction of entire civilizations. Your involvement is not negotiable." "But I have rights," Jude objected. "Physical autonomy. What about it? How about this?" "Your out-of-date ideas about rights don't matter here," the Zari judge cut in. "All local laws and customs are superseded by galactic law. You will either comply or suffer dire repercussions." Senator Cavo strolled up, following a dainty blue hand sweeping over Jude's torso. He recoiled at the contact of her. Cooing, "Come now, my pet," she said. "Is becoming my husband really going to be that bad? I promise that any inconvenience is greatly outweighed by the delights I can provide." Jude's flesh stung. "I won't be a part of this," he snarled. "It's slavery, plain and simple." Cavo's eyes flickered erratically. "Humane and compassionate. You're walking on thin ice." Once more, the slick judge leaned closer, her voice a hissing menace. "Perhaps the specimen requires motivation to cooperate." Jude's heart froze at the suggestion of danger. He cast a furiously searching glance about for a way out, but the guards were on duty and the chamber was locked. He found himself confined. "Dr. Jude Hartley, this tribunal finds you guilty of attempting to evade your galactic duty," the Zari judge said, lifting an object that resembled a gavel. "By this decree, you are bound to carry out your breeding duties in the authorized Senator Zira Cavo's spouse. You will immediately leave to start your new life on her homeworld. The matter is now closed." With a loud snap, the gavel dropped, deciding Jude's fate. Senator Cavo laughed silverly as the soldiers tried to usher him out of the chamber. "Ah, this will be so much fun," she sighed, her voice full of contentment. "I do so love breaking in the spirited ones." As the doors closed behind Jude, His final sight was of the senator's menacing grin. Jude's visit to Senator Cavo's homeworld seemed to go by quickly. He was confined to his quarters on her private yacht for the most of it, alternating between depressing outbursts of fury and futile attempts to reason with his captors. Jude put his face against the screen when they eventually came out of hyperspace. Gazing out the window, catching his first look at the foreign planet, he would soon call home. Zari Prime glistened in the distance like a brilliant sapphire, its surface a tumbling patchwork of vivid teals and deep blues. Jude spotted enormous cities as they fell through the stratosphere, of crystal columns emerging from blue oceans. It was both incredibly lovely and completely foreign. They landed in a vast mansion with a view of an unending ocean, located atop a cliff. Almost dragging Jude off the ship, Senator Cavo was proud to display her new toy. "My pet, welcome home," she sighed and waved, magnificently. "I sincerely hope your accommodations will meet your needs. If you carry out your responsibilities, of course, you won't need anything here." Jude clenched his jaw, stifling a sharp reply. For the time being, at least, he had to comply. Look for a weakness, or a way out of this golden cage. A tiny army of blue-skinned servants surrounded them as soon as they entered the mansion. Jude was taken away to be ready for a welcoming ceremony, while Cavo gave commands in her melodic language. After several hours, Jude washed and clad in elaborate extraterrestrial attire. Next to Senator Cavo, in a stately hall crowded with noble Zari people. The senator proudly displayed him to her peers, treating him like a valued pet and telling them how she had managed to obtain such a wonderful specimen. Jude forced a phony smile on his face as his thoughts raced. A needed to exist. A way out of this, some weakness in their defenses, some understanding ear he could lean on. However, as the night went on and he noticed other human husbands strewn throughout the throng, all sporting the same defeated, hollow-eyed expression, a frigid knot of dread developed in his abdomen. And if there was no way out? What if this was really how he was going to live from now on? Senator Cavo approached him and put a possessive arm around his waist, perhaps picking up on his feelings. Whispering, Now, my pet," she said. "Don't appear so depressed. The evening is young, and there is still a lot of celebration to have." Her meaning was very clear. Shuddering, Jude escorted him out of the corridor and into her private rooms. Subscribe to watch more amazing sci-fi stories.